my friends. I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome! Today, we are answering a question for RPG a Day. This is question 5 for day 5. And the question is, what is the oldest game you've played? Now, I'm going to go out there and say, what's the oldest role-playing game? Because obviously I've played old games. I mean, I've played Atari games that are older than most role-playing games, and I've certainly played chess, which is ancient, and more recent, I've played games like Monopoly and Risk, and, these are old games. But, role-playing games. Okay. Role-playing games started when I did. 1974 is when I was born. 1974, just 20 days after I was born, was when Gary Gygax stapled together his first Dungeons and Dragons adventure game, which was really just a supplement of his chainmail role-playing game to add more about playing an individual hero character in a fantasy world, and adding all the rules and stuff to be able to do that. He'd already had chainmail. Now Dungeons and Dragons really put that together into a game where you could play as that character rather than just promote a unit in a war game. This made it a role-playing game. Got it. I do have that, by the way. I do have the game, but I haven't played it because cumbersome. It's a little cumbersome. But I do have it. But I have never played it. I have a couple of games that are older that I have not played, but the oldest game that I own and have played is this one. You might go, move it closer, Rob, so we can see it. Well, the reason why this is a bit hard to tell what this is because it's missing its jacket. I played and read through this book so much that its outer cover is gone to history. Fell through the staples, etc., etc. But I'm pretty sure most of you would recognize if I showed you what it did look like, which is this. That's right, this is the red box Dungeons and Dragons, what would eventually be called Basic Dungeons and Dragons. And this is the oldest game I own. I think it was conceived in 1980. Dungeons and Dragons had gone through a couple of attempts to bridge the gap between Dungeons and Dragons, which was kind of an arcane war game that had role-playing game elements in it. It was adapting, but its evolution was a little on the rough side. People who played it and enjoyed it really did like the warfare style of it, but just with characters and role-playing elements. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, on the other hand, added more of the role-playing game into it, with different options and choices for your characters, much more that you could do. Most of it were quality of life changes, so the players got to feel cooler and have more options and different things that could make them have their own special characters. Attach more personal feeling to them and encourage the roleplay of it. Eventually, they wanted to come up with something a little bit more open to the people. Something easier to understand with all the stuff that you needed packed into one box. That was 2 editions that came out, called BX edition for a lot of people. And they were put together by 2 folks named Mulvey and Holmes. Both of those are beloved for some of the people who used those particular sets, and it was the Holmes version that I first got my hands on when my parents got it when I was 8. I read through it voraciously, but didn't understand everything, and I certainly had nobody to play with. Nobody would run it for me, that's for sure. My parents would never have done that. So, it was cool, but neither of those games quite gripped the imagination like what they were hoping for. Even though they came bundled with some of the best modules that ever came out, the basic version came out with enough to run your character from 1st to 3rd level, bring you into D&D even if you've never played a game like this before, and it came bundled with Keep on the Borderlands. Later on, the expert set that covered, I think, up to 10th level had The Lost Island? Island of the Ape? No, that was later. Wasn't Lost City. Isle of Dread. Isle of Dread, that was it. So, Isle of Dread was more wide open exploration, keep on the borderlands covered exploration, dungeon crawling, and a hub city. Great starts. And they made plenty of modules and things to support that, but what it really came down to was trying to get new people into it, because it was really regarded as this nerdy thing that college kids did before they'd outgrow it and go get a job and get married and do their whatever. Well, that didn't always happen. People loved this game, and as it evolved, it got better and better for new people coming into it. It got less difficult to understand. The BX sets from Holmes and Mold, they helped to bridge that gap, but really what knocked it out of the park, what really opened it up, caught me in with it, was this version, which is called Back Me by many people because it comes in 5 stages. Basic. Just introduces you to the beginning elements of role-playing games and Dungeons & Dragons specifically, explaining in an engaging and conversational way how Dungeons & Dragons works, which is especially important to somebody who's never played these games before. It was very well written in an attempt to be able to draw everybody in. It was also given amazing art by Larry Elmore, as well as several other fine artists, but Larry is really what brought people to the dance with this eye-catching, just pop, amazing art. This edition really was the clincher, and so many people that I've talked to, this was their first introduction to Dungeons and Dragons, and it was a heck of a crusher. After the basic set here, you then had the blue box, the expert set, which brought you up to level 10. The green set after that, the companion set, would bring you up to about level 25. By this time, you were moving on beyond just being scabby adventurers. You could actually, own a keep and be the lord of the land. Or you could go on and continue questing and adventuring and just facing more and more tough monsters, but with more responsibility to the world around you at the same time. And then when you get to the black set, the master set, after 25th level, would bring you up to 36th level. It introduced some new ideas for the game, which, quite honestly, by that time you're starting to talk about things like weapon mastery and stuff, which you've already gone far beyond where the entry point for those kind of skills and powers and abilities might have helped earlier on. But this is for somebody who had played up to that point and then went back. You could introduce some of those elements for another playthrough so that your character could learn weapon skills as you were going up in levels. This would eventually be rectified by the Rules Compendium, which was a hardcover set that had all the compiled rules for all the different versions of the game. The last part of Back Me I is the gold box, the Immortal set, which is an arcane cluster of rules that I, to this day, don't know anybody who actually made a character all the way up to 36th level, turned them immortal, and then enjoyed playing those rules. Some interesting ideas, trying to codify divinity. Very, very ambitious ideas, and they made modules for it, and I have a module for it, and I don't dare run it because it's a bit cumbersome. It's like learning whole new sets of rules for a game that you've been playing for 36 levels. Or even if you just start out with a brand new immortal character, yeah, it's okay. But that was the oldest game that I've ever played. I got to play with my first game master, Gary, back in the day, who himself had been playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so it was kind of a downscaling for him. But it was fun. Certainly. I enjoyed it, and then I went back and played Advanced Dungeons & Dragons when I was in high school with some other people. And then when I got to the seminary, my sophomore year, I ran a campaign of Back Me Dungeons & Dragons. Bring characters up from first level up to, I think they ended up in 13th, 14th level by the end of the year. Some of the characters who were with me the whole time, shout-outs to Aragon and Banadin, who were characters run by my best friend Vince. And over that time, there were several other characters that joined their adventures. It was a good... I enjoyed that campaign quite a bit. very long player character mortality, just telling a really good story. But it really wasn't until college when I really got a taste for really narrative gaming by meeting other game masters and learning their style. So, yeah, good times. But yeah, that is the oldest. I have other games from the 80s that I've played, certainly. Second edition Paranoia, I think, came from late 80s. I have Ghostbusters from 1986 that I've recently run. Never played, unfortunately, but run. And I have a couple of relics from older days. I have Roll Master and Space Master. Those are certainly venerable relics compared to what a lot of people play or talk about these days. But they are games that we remember fondly. Even though I've still never worked up the courage to run Roll Master, I've loved looking through those books and seeing those critical tables, and I did get to play some Middle-earth role-playing back in the day, too. Iron Crown Enterprises, shout out. Whoop, whoop. Their Rollmaster, their Middle-earth role-playing game, those were chunky, clodding sets, but you could tell some gripping adventures, and combat definitely had a bite to it. Definitely did, in a way that Dungeons & Dragons just doesn't comparatively. Yeah, there's nothing like taking a type B critical bleeding wound to really spice up that life or death feeling, especially when it happens in the first stroke you take in a fight. It can happen. Yes, it can. So anyway, that is the oldest game that I have played. I think it's the oldest game I have. Yeah, I've played, and I haven't played a lot of it. I run far more than I've ever played, but that pretty much is the way most games are with me. If I've played it, I want to run it, because I see something in the game that I've played that I want to bring out for other people. So I hope that kind of explains things about me and about my process in terms of gaming. Hopefully this entertained you with this little snapshot through history and my reliving of it. And if so, I hope that you like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to tell you more, and I've got more videos coming out this month, of course. All day, every day, it seems. So, thank you very much for joining me for this RPG a Day question. If you have a friend who was interested in old games, feel free to link to me, and I'd be glad to entertain them as well. But I do hope that you come back for more videos, because otherwise I'm just talking to an empty room, and that's no fun. So if you do, I do hope that between then and now, you, yes, you, get a chance to roll some dice, play some games, have some fun, and stay safe out there, my friends. Until next time, farewell.